No hype. OpenClaw is powerful. It's also not magic and not safe by default. Hello, I'm Jeremy Grove, founder of Metadata Fusion. Here's my practical take on OpenClaw, what it does, how to sandbox it, and what breaks in real use. OpenClaw, the AI that actually does things. This was created as an open source project by a developer who came out of retirement to create this in his spare time. It is quite an interesting project, and it's caught my eye of interest as it was open source. And it supports the BYOK model, which I'm very, very strong on, is not being provider locked down. So as most of you know, it came out first as ClawBot, and then it was changed to Moltbot, and now we've arrived at OpenClaw, which I actually prefer that name. Anthropic quickly sent a cease and desist on the name, which I think that's going to come back to haunt them, as he's now partnered with OpenAI. But we'll leave all those discussions for another video and its implications. But apparently, it's going to stay open source, and that is good, because that's what caught my interest. But I think the main takeaway is the proof of concept, because this can be replicated. Apparently, the developer that created this, Peter Steinberger, originally created this working with Claude Code, and he wanted a way to connect to his Claude Code via WhatsApp, etc. And apparently, that project started in this way. And this does support many channels to talk to your OpenClaw. OpenClaw supports several methods to talk remotely with your agent. WhatsApp, Telegram, Discord, iMessage, etc. For the sake of my recommendation, for most people, Telegram is going to be a good starting point. Then you might want to branch off to Discord for better group chats, etc. But Telegram is a very good starting point for most people. My recommendation, for sure, for OpenClaw, even for experienced developers, is to put this on its own computer and then a virtual machine inside of that computer. Therefore, you're going to lock it down in its own environment. That is definitely going to be the safest way to test and validate this. Because one of the things about this, you are basically giving this thing the keys to the kingdom, and you're going to want to reduce that blast radius. And I will go into more details on the complete setup in some follow-up videos if I see the community wanting that, because there's a lot of things that you should be doing to validate this before you take it out of a virtual environment. And even myself, I'm still running it in virtual environments before I go to bare metal. And that'll probably be my permanent once I've fully tested and validated various AI agent systems. Then once it's validated, then it would go to bare metal. On my website, metadatafusion.com, under the resources section guides, I offer a free OpenClaw community setup guide. This walks you through my recommendation. Of course, other people are free to go at their own risk and on what they do. And whatever method you choose, there's definitely risks with this tool. This is a powerful tool, and it's very important, in my opinion, to sandbox it and restrict the agents. I'm not going to go into all the agent architecture in this video. There may be follow-up videos after this, if the community is requesting these, on how to properly set up your agents. Because you should have a team of agents. And this is one way that you can mitigate the risks, is how you set up your agents and the permissions that you give to those agents. I'll just give you a tidbit on one way that I think is extremely safe. Is your main agent. I will not give the keys to the kingdom to my main agent, specifically for this reason. If my main agent goes rogue, he can't destroy everything. So I would basically set my main agent up. He'll have a strategic partner, and then I will have an elder agent who will have the keys to the kingdom, but he is on standby and on call only after the proper escalation process is gone through. But we will have deeper videos on those if I see the need in the community on setting that up. But you're going to want to set this up inside of a virtual environment. I've seen quite a few YouTube videos recommending setting these up on a virtual private server. I absolutely do not recommend that. I am actually a very senior developer and have full security knowledge, and I would not even want to do that. It has no logical and practical use, in my opinion. You could take any computer. Of course, if you have a more powerful computer, it's better. I actually have multiple Mac Minis. I think they're a great investment. So of course, I threw it on a Mac Mini, and then I put it inside of a virtual environment inside of that, and I will test it and validate it completely before going to bare metal. And bare metal is basically meaning when I will put it on its own machine without the constraints of the virtual environment. But you can work much safer inside of a virtual environment. The second point that you will need to do, and you certainly should do, is give your AI agents their own credentials. So that's their own Google account, their own API keys, etc. You need to be able to monitor that and turn it on and off at will. Okay? So in my setup guide, which you can obtain at MediaDataFusion.com, the resource section of the guides, you'll have all the information, whether you're on Mac OS, Windows, or Linux, on how to set up the virtual machine. Okay? And this is definitely one of the recommendations that I will go through. And you'll see inside of the guide the virtual machine recommendation on its own computer, whether you be on Mac OS or Windows, having credentials set up for your AI agents, and recommending Telegram for your first start point, and then you can branch out from there. You've got all the documentation, etc., and the links to the virtual machine services. So the one that I have set up on this machine is right here for UTM. It works great. I use it for lots of other projects. For me, it's a very great sandboxing environment. So recommending the dedicated computer. And why? The VM is your containment layer, and then you have the second layer of it being on its own computer. And then you also have its own credentials, which you can lock that down as well. Bare metal has a little less isolation, and the VPS definitely increases the risks and operational burden. One thing that you should also be thinking about: how are you running your backups? How are you prepared to port your development process of your AI agent system out? I see quite a few videos, but I don't see much people talking about how they're backing up their virtual machines, how they're making sure that their work is locked down. Because if you're fine-tuning an AI agent system, you want to be able to test it, validate it, and port that out, and then replicate it. And this is what I do. So here's UTM. You'll download that and set up your virtual environment. The guide that you can get, MediaDataFusion.com, or the resource section guides, goes through all this in detail, so I won't go through all that here, but it's pretty straightforward. I do not recommend setting up an Apple ID. I would definitely recommend keeping that as back down as possible. Then once you get inside your virtual machine, you get it all set up, you're going to want to run this one command, pretty straightforward, and then go through the onboarding process. Then you're going to go through the installation process. I already have this installed, and there's tons of other videos walking you through that, but it's really pretty straightforward. The onboarding process, you're going to select your provider. If you have a OpenAI account, you could definitely log in with that. I definitely recommend OpenAI for one of your agents. I would recommend GLM 5 and MiniMax 2.5 and Kimi K2.5. We will go into those efficiencies in later videos. But of course, Opus 4.6 obviously works great. But for me, the cost to performance ratio, it's not worth it for any testing purposes for me at all. I will only use Opus once a model is completely tested and validated. And for me, the best way to validate them is in a different method. But I would definitely recommend for most people that have an OpenAI account, sign in with your ChatGPT account. I would probably not make that my primary model if I were you. I would run MiniMax 2.5, pretty affordable to validate an agent. Same with GLM 5. And then maybe use your OpenAI Codex 5.3 as your Elder, which I'll go into some of that setup. I think it's a really efficient way that you can validate your process and keep your blast radiuses small. And as far as the Claw Hub, I definitely do not recommend downloading any skills from here. I mean, of course, you're free to do as you want. My recommendation, I mean, a lot of these skills have malware inside of them. They're not even built correctly. They're not, nobody's standing behind them. I would definitely be building these yourself. So yeah, I have built basically all my own skills, which I would recommend that most people do. Another pro tip, if you do have ZAI, it has a built-in MCP web search. Basically, depending on what plan you're on, almost unlimited. I think in this OpenClaw platform, they have the Brave web search, which I definitely do not want to use. I've disabled it, and like the agents kind of get polluted with that Brave search. I've had to prune that out of their memory really hard, so they will be forced to use the ZAI MCP tool, which works great if you're wanting to go out and scrape the web for whatever your use case is. I would definitely recommend that. So after you get this set up, you're going to want to create your agents. Depending on your level, your skill level and your experience, even for a novice, you're definitely going to want to have your main brain, obviously, and then your sub agents. I would recommend at minimum 4-agent process. So you're going to have your main brain, and then you're going to have your main brain like a strategic partner, and you're going to want to try and force them to collaborate with each other to increase their intelligence. And you can validate them with a less intelligent model by forcing them to talk to each other. And then you could have your most expensive model as like an elder, but they're not allowed to consult with that elder unless they get blocked, etc. And then you're going to want to have some workers in between. I will go into some of this architecture in the later videos if people in the community are interested in that. But that's your next step, is you're going to want to set up your agent process, and then you're going to have to define that. I do see a lot of YouTube videos, people recommending that you tell your agent to codify this. I do not recommend that at all. Honestly, I think that's the most inefficient and most expensive way, and you're going to get the worst output. You should be putting this inside of your terminal, the whole root of the entire project, the .OpenClaw, and you should be editing this project just like you would any other project. And you're going to edit. So for number one, you're going to edit your agents. You're going to edit their permissions. So I don't recommend that your main agent has the keys to the kingdom. You're going to want to force your main agent to collaborate with his strategic partner, and you're going to want to force your main agent to use the correct agents for the correct job. So like say you have an agent that's searching the web, then you're going to have maybe even another agent that validates that output, etc. So you're going to want to force them to collaborate in a team and give each one of them the keys and the permissions that they need for that job. Okay, so you're going to want to train them like this. Okay, and I definitely recommend going into your CLI, whether it be Factory AI Droid, whether it be Claude Code, OpenCode, any of those tools. I have many guides on my website, MiniDataFusion.com, in the resources section, guides, Claude Code, multi-provider setup and switcher guide, Factory AI Droid, etc. I would definitely recommend editing that in there. The same with your scheduled cron jobs. I would recommend you doing all that within your terminal, not through the agent. Of course, you can do that. I think you're going to get less optimal output. I think you're going to get hallucinations. And I think it's going to cost you more money instead of just going in there and doing this. So this is definitely what I would recommend. You're going to want to do a lot of iterations on that. And like I said, I will go do a deeper dive on how you validate and fine-tune these systems. You're going to also want to link it to Telegram. You're going to, my current process, and of course this is going to evolve, and depending on whether you're on Discord, etc. I think you want a one-to-one with your main agent. And then I have another channel set up where I can talk to my sub-agents directly. Because I may want to call in one of my sub-agents to chase down my main agent. Here is my Telegram. You got my main agent. So I have a one-to-one with my main agent where I've got him set up. So one of the ways that I'm testing my agent is I've got it linked to my Google Workspace. So I've created tools. I did not use the default skills built in for the Google Workspace. I think it was a much better for me to create my own skills and my own tools for this. So I've created ones for them to access Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides, Google Drive, etc., with specific instructions on, tabs and, what to do. I've created skills for them on how to scrape leads, escalation process. You'll see some of Xavier's feedback on this. Okay, and then I have a router agent. So if I need to speak to one of my sub agents, so I've got a lot. So Solomon is my elder agent, the most powerful agent. He has no restrictions. He's also got the most powerful model. So I can just send him a message. State your agent name, model number, give me a full breakdown of your directive. This is just a test. Testing your directives and your access permissions. So just showing you how I have my router agent set up. So basically on Telegram, there are some limitations. I have played around with it a little bit about a direct line, but basically the most fine-tuned way that I've set this one up is the router agent is kind of like the in-between. You'll see an arrow pop up and a task sent, and she's going to send that message to Solomon. So you'll see that. So Solomon is my most powerful agent. I've got him set up on Codex 5.3, which I think is a really fine model. And he's going to report back. So this works really good in case your main agent gets stuck or you need him to override. So because I have him with no permissions. My main agent has restrictions. So I can call on Solomon or one of my other agents to step in. If I see something's not going the way I want it, I will call on them to do that. So you'll see Solomon confirmed his identity. He's the elder agent running on GPT 5.3 Codex. So this works very well if I need him to override another agent and spawn another agent. The whole idea is to make the agents work with each other. It's quite interesting watching them engage back and forth with each other, because the new agents, they have to be spawned. So basically, it's a brand new session, and they kind of understand it. So it's quite interesting. So this is the dashboard that I have set up on Google Docs. And the reason I'm setting it up because I work a lot with Google Workspace. So for me, this is a tool that I want to refine and validate and test it deeply. And I want to take the guardrail because basically, if you're putting the most powerful model in charge, you're basically relying on that LM. And so what if that LM goes off the rails? What's going to happen? So I think it's really actually important to fine tune this with not the dumbest models, but a little bit less powerful models, but I have the more intelligent model as kind of an overseer, just making sure that they're working all right. So I have them, the morning briefing tab. This is where he'll give me my morning breakdown. And by the way, I had him create this image as well. Hourly briefing, this is mandatory. So every hour, they're supposed to give me a feedback on what's been done the last hour and what's coming up the next hour, etc. And then we have milestones, etc. We have the agent architecture. We have the business architecture, active projects, etc. Okay. Of course, yeah, I mean, the sky's the limit. I mean, these, they have access to, that you give them access to what you want, what your workflow is. And I recommend testing them slowly. You're going to want to validate these things before you go further. So I also have them with a Google Sheets where I have them testing them, scraping the web with the qualified leads, etc. I set them with a target. I can set the target whatever I want. This is my current target is 500 a day, but that's qualified leads. So they have a criterion. I have skills and MCPs that I've built. They're supposed to use these first, and then with that criterion, they're supposed to go search. And then I have another agent that validates those leads, and then I have another agent that actually appends them to the Google Sheet. And then we have our token outreach, etc. So these are just some ways that you can test invalidate this system how you need to. And then I ran a couple tests on Google Slides, just seeing what they can do. But basically, for me, I'm running a lot of testing inside of here, and I'm fine-tuning the model, giving it strict criterion and benchmarking their performance. I've also given it access to Factory AI Droid, so it can access the Droid platform. It can access open code. So I also have them coding on various projects as well. So the sky's the limit. So in future videos, we can go into some of the setup on this. Another key point that you're going to want to set up is the context management and memory pruning. I've got systems because the agents hallucinate, and you're going to want to prune their memory. That's something that's actually extremely important. I'm surprised I haven't heard anybody talking about it. Pruning, because they will pollute their memory, and then they'll pollute their future output. So you're going to want to prune their memory regularly. You're going to basically want to audit it because it's basically data corruption. So you're going to want to prune their memory, and I think that you need to also, the auto-compaction, you're going to want to also program that myself. I don't want them to get over 60%. I think I have them set it to auto-compact and do a memory flush at 55%, but you can even go lower. I don't recommend higher. Bottom line, OpenClaw is powerful, but only if you run in containment and with discipline. If this helped, you know what to do. Subscribe, like, and I'll see you in the next one.